Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Thank you so much for joining us for another amazing session of the Daily African Proverbs. My name is Simon Javan Okello, and I am in Seattle, Washington. It's 6 a.m. in the morning, and that's when the Daily African Proverbs, comes to you. This is a daily staple that we bring to our community globally, so that we can use these African proverbs to deepen our understanding of African wisdom. Yesterday we hosted the incredible Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is a respected spiritual leader based in South Africa, but from Zimbabwe originally. And today I am truly privileged to have Mohit Arora, who is, a cultural, creator, is an organizer, is a health equity organizer. He's got many years of experience in the music industry, but he's also one of the people here on Clubhouse especially that you want to follow, you want to pay attention to, and you want to work together with because of the impact that he's having, on many people's lives, including myself. So my brother Mohit, thank you for traveling to Nigeria with us virtually. And I want you to share with us what this proverb from Nigeria means to you. The proverb says, "The tongue is only 3 inches, but it can kill a man that is 6 feet tall." Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, Brother Simon, thank you so much for having me today. It's absolutely a pleasure, and I've always loved what you do here with African Father in America. It's such a beautiful show. That I've been thinking about this proverb, and I think it's truly beautiful because talking about this, I think it goes to show the power of words. It goes to show the power of education, the power of knowledge. But to take it a little bit further, I think one thing that really stands out to me is I've always believed in this idea that we should live life based off our decisions rather than our conditions. Now, this is, I will preface it by saying that this is also a mentality that comes with a certain sense of privilege. It comes from because some of us are put into conditions sometimes that we don't have as many decisions. However, there's always some decision to be made, whether it's about how we react to something, how we choose to view something, whatever it may be. And oftentimes we think about life from what current circumstance we're in. But rather, when we make the decision, and that condition is the 6-foot person. But the decision is, how do we want to react or how do we want to act? And I think that is where we have the majority of our power. It is in what we choose to do and how we choose to conduct ourselves in that moment. And that is the most powerful thing we can do. It's the decision of being an active participant in our lives, as opposed to someone who just accepts what we have been conditioned to believe is potentially the circumstance in the moment.
That's a difficult thing to do. I think it requires so many levels of awareness, consciousness, and also just work in order for you to be courageous enough to not rely on what you're being told to do on a day-to-day basis, but do what is right. And yes. I appreciate you for sharing your thoughts on this proverb. But I want us to go a little further. As a leader, I've always observed, first of all, thank you for your support with Africa Day. We held a historic Africa Day last year. We are doing it again on Clubhouse in May of this year. But you're one of the people who are not African, but you are so persistent in ensuring we succeed. And so as a result, we had a 24-hour marathon that people still refer to when it comes to some of the most impactful events on Clubhouse. Chauncey recently honored me and you among other creators on Clubhouse. But I wanted you to just share with us a story from your childhood that as a leader, as you sit today, continues to inspire you, continues to make you feel like, let me wake up and have this podcast interview with Simon, even though it's so early in the morning.
No, absolutely. I mean, there are so many stories from my childhood that it's interesting, because oftentimes I think we kind of forget some of those stories until we become older, and then they become life moments in retrospect. But the one that's always stood out to me, and it's part of my family's Hindu, and part of the Hindu mythology that always stood out to me is something I learned as a child. But our epic literature, it's called the Bhagavad Gita, and in this, there's a story that shares, one of our main deities is, about to embark on a new journey, and is looking around, and everyone at this time has the power of a god or a goddess, right? And so everyone's at war at this point, and they're just, there's the battle of egos, there's a battle of power, there's a battle of all this. And so this deity is speaking with essentially his archer, but his most trusted confidant. And this confidant is saying, well, we need to find a way to remove people's power from them, because they don't seem to understand the way of utilizing it if they've never earned it. And so they're debating, how do we do this? Where do we put the power? And so they're debating, and they say, well, maybe we should put it in the deepest ends of the forest. And the deity says, and the deity's name is Krishna. Sorry, not this one's Shivji. And so Shivji's thinking, well, maybe I don't know, maybe sooner or later people are going to, find it. They're going to discover it, and then everyone's going to have access to it again. They say, okay, the depths of the ocean, same problem. Okay, let's put their power in space. And the deity says, well, no, we can't. And so ultimately they decide, you know what? If we take everyone's power from them and we hide it deep within each person, each of them is going to actually have to discover it for themselves. And that is the way that they can earn it, because they have to do the individual work, not one person finding it and then everyone has access to it. And so I think about this quite a bit. It's actually one of the stories that kind of helps me lead my life, where I'm thinking, how do we find the best way of activating that and earning that power that's within us? We have to remember that it is within us. We all have the power that is greater than us. We just need to find a way of accessing it. And by accessing it, we understand the power of it. We understand the purpose of it. We've earned it. This is something I think about on a daily basis. It helps me better understand what I need to do in my life to continue showing up, continue being consistent, and continue recognizing that everything that I have power to right now, any person who pays attention to me, any platform I've developed, is something I've had to work and earn for. But if I want to continue to feel like I'm worthy of it, I need to do it its justice. I need to do it not just for me, but I need to give access to other people to learn how they can access their own inner power. That is the most guiding story that I've ever been told, which I learned when I was quite young. I think maybe 7 or 8.
Thank you so much. Wow, I love it, and I have so much respect for Indian culture, because the member of parliament for my hometown in Kisumu is an Indian, and so I grew up seeing some of the the deities that you're mentioning in the community, really. And so thank you for sharing that powerful story with us. And I feel that this is what informs what you're doing with the Faith Makers platform. I know that you are an avid health equity, activist and organizers, but I want us to start from Faith Makers. Share with us why this is important to you, and if there's someone in the room who is listening to the first time, why they should show up and support what you're doing with Faith Makers. Then we want to go to health equity right after that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's perfect you mentioned Faith Makers, because that story, and maybe I didn't even realize it myself until you just brought it up, but it's directly related to why I have this. So Faith Makers itself is something, as an unofficial, what I do with it actually started back in 2008. And it was meant based off of that same understanding: live life based off of your decisions, not your conditions. And so what I had done with that was I made this decision. I wanted to create a community of people who are active participants in guiding their life. People who don't live life based off of the prison of conditioned mentality, but rather they actively show up every single day to find a way to live at their highest potential. So I would organize these brunches, I would organize these dinner parties, and just these random conversations with people. And I would, I come from the music industry, as you mentioned earlier, and I would organize it where someone who's won several, a client of mine, an artist I was working with, someone who's won several Grammys, been on the top of the Billboard, with someone who is just starting culinary school, and with someone else who might be the most amazing, in their field, someone who is maybe a carpenter, a plumber, and someone else who might be, a creator of some sort, right? Outside of music, but maybe in some form of entertainment, film, social media, whatever it may be. And it was meant to bring together people who actively think, well, what else can we do? How else can we help? And that way, you think the person who in society's form is the most successful is going to be doing most of the speaking, most of the education, but actually, more times than not, they were learning a lot more from everyone else. And from there, it continued to graduate a little bit to the point where I wanted to make sure that everyone, there's this quote from Mother Teresa that says, make sure that everyone who sees you leaves you feeling better than when they came to see you. I'm paraphrasing there. And so that's what it ultimately was. Faith Makers is a place for everyone to come together in kind of this living room setting, whether it's in real life or whether it's digital, and to make sure that everyone has a seat on the floor. Grab a seat on the couch if there's space. This kind of mentality, and let's come together as kind of a village, and let's discuss ideas. Let's find a way to teach each other. Let's find a way to continue to think. And let's find a way to help each other access our most inner power, right? The ultimate thing with Faith Makers is to make sure that anyone who is there not only learns, but is also comfortable accessing that power. And that includes vulnerability. That same person that I mentioned who might have won several Grammys and been on the top of Billboard, whenever you see those things in the news and it shows like, oh my gosh, their life is at this great height, more often than not, I'll rephrase it. Very often, you will find out that some of the same people who are going through these public spotlights and highs are actually experiencing some personal turmoil as well, and it's okay to share that as well. It's okay for success to not be linear, because that's the reality. Success is not linear. So the only way for us to access these higher potentials that we have is for us to express our vulnerability. And I wanted to start Faith Makers back in 2008, and then only recently bringing it over to the Clubhouse platform to make sure that I was able to access the same quality of conversation and provide that for more people. But I couldn't do it when I first joined Clubhouse, because I needed to make sure that I built at least a strong community within myself, which is based off of trust, and that comes with time. So I only started it really a year and a half after I joined the platform, because that was the right time for me to help bring together a community based off of trust.
Thank you. I feel that when you speak about a community based out of trust, it also reminds me of the daily African proverbs, and this, I consider this a sacred space. We've been cultivating this space for the last year here on Clubhouse, but before that, I have been collecting African proverbs for years, and since I started bringing it to this space, I have even collected more. And for example, the proverb we are discussing today was sent to me by Raphael Hari, who is from the Ijo tribe from Nigeria. So, some of these proverbs that we share are deeply connected to specific people and specific cultures and specific ancestors, because the proverbs we discuss are things that our ancestors discussed long before we were here. And the hope is that as we record and discuss them, our children will find, these nuggets of wisdom as well. And so if you're joining us on Clubhouse, thank you so much. My name is Simon Okello, and I'm hosting the incredible Mohit Aurora, who is our special guest today. And you can join us on YouTube. We are live streaming. The link is at the top of the room. And in about 15 minutes, we are going to invite you all who are on stage to also share with us quickly, your interpretation of this proverb. But at this moment, I want us to go into health equity. Mohit, this is something you've been passionate about for a long time, and I think originally that's how I knew you. And I wanted you to describe what health equity is to somebody who does not know what it is, and then describe to us why it's important to you and some of the initiatives that you're currently involved with.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, health equity, it's ultimately an umbrella term that refers to a lot underneath it. And what health equity is, it's about a framework of understanding why don't we all have access to healthy outcomes, to healthy lives. And so oftentimes people get stuck on the word health, but the word equity is oftentimes more important, because that is the fundamental way of approaching how we can all gain health. And so we look at all of the barriers that create access issues to healthy outcomes. So we're looking at things like, income disparities. We're looking at things like the misunderstandings and a lot of the barriers that are created off of race, gender. We're looking at schooling. We're looking at all of these different things, geographic, language, whatever it may be. We're looking at all of these different systems, food insecurities, right? How do we better understand the barriers that impact people and create more disparities throughout our world? Because each of those disparities is something that prevents us from accessing a healthy life and healthier outcomes. So when I'm doing this kind of work, it looks like things like some of it is still talking about directly about health. The other night, we hosted a conversation that was promoting the premiere of a new documentary called Eggs Over Easy, Black Women in Fertility. And this is an amazing documentary that premiered on the Oprah Winfrey Network. And that one was talking more about the statistics that people oftentimes don't know about why there are issues when it comes to maternal health care rates and when it comes to fertility, when it has to do specifically with Black women in the healthcare system, and when doctors oftentimes might not listen, or when you need a really good advocate around you, a patient advocate, someone to push you. We oftentimes refer to like the story of Serena Williams and her husband when she was going through maternity, and these are some of the ways that we're able to, by hosting some of these conversations and by making sure we understand why those barriers exist. What are some of the real stats that showcase, is this actually something based off of our body, or is it based off of a systemic issue? Oftentimes people say, when you look at someone who suffers from sickle cell, which is it's an illness that primarily impacts those of black of the Black community and within Afro-Caribbean descent. We're looking at this, and oftentimes there's issues where doctors don't listen to the pain, and they say, oh well, you have a higher pain threshold, or this person is drug seeking is an often thing that's heard in hospitals when someone is seriously going through a serious issue and they need access to pain medication. They need access to it, and oftentimes the doctors say, well, this person is just drug seeking. They're exaggerating their pain. But how we're able to address this, how we address not just the current system, you have to look back. You have to be like a 5-year-old child and ask the question why 5 times at least, to go back to find out what are the root issues. So when we're understanding this is something that's not just in that moment, it's something that has been taught through medical education. Why is that? Okay, so now that's an area where we can address. But what is it in society that has been created that makes someone create this as part of the curriculum? Why is this happening? Why are there not proper resources of access? Why don't the doctors listen? How do we provide more platforms, more community, and more education around addressing this? So ultimately, that's a little bit of a way of getting into it, but that's ultimately, a great example of discussing health equity. People oftentimes talk about equality, but equality is a very different. It's almost like, they say in the psychology world, they talk about, there's sympathy, there's sympathy, there's empathy, then there's compassion. In the social justice framework, it's a similar framework where we think, well, there's equality, then there's equity, then there's liberation. So equity is the framework to help us get to a point of liberation.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. If you're listening, thank you for being here with us. This is the Daily African Proverbs, and you've been listening to Mohit Arora, who is my special guest today. And we are in the African Father in America Club on Clubhouse. Remember to follow the club. And also, if you'd like to see our faces and know what these voices that you're listening to look like, tap the link at the top of the room on Clubhouse and join us on YouTube. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that when we have these conversations, you can also be a part of it. In about 7 minutes, we are going to hear your interpretations if you are on stage. But if you're not on stage, in 7 minutes, we are closing hand raising. So this is a good time for you to join us. But now, Mohit, the amazing work you're doing, you can't do it alone, And I wanted you to quickly highlight some of the most incredible, collaborations that you've had with faith makers and your work as a health equity advocate. Some of the collaborations that excite you and that make you feel that, you're on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't do anything without those collaborations. Community is absolutely everything. In terms of what I've done, and I'll even just give more recent examples of what I've done on the platform of Clubhouse, and that is collaborating with people like I just mentioned, the event we hosted the other night. That one was done with the filmmaker of that documentary, Eggs Over Easy, and that one was done with the filmmaker Shakuda Lockley. And like that is a collaboration where we're able to tap into both of our networks, where she's providing the full panel, and I'm really speaking to them, and I am ultimately not a host, but rather an amplifier to help bring more people into the conversation that otherwise would not be in that conversation. Bring more, men into the conversation too when it comes to anything to do with women's health. Oftentimes people have this mentality that just because something does not impact my body, that means it doesn't impact my life. And that's absolutely false. You absolutely need to be aware and not be ignorant about these situations to better understand how we can all be healthier. And so I'll do these kinds of collaborations with people who are primarily, I always look at every situation first before I go to physicians, before I go to researchers, always first based off of the lived experience. Who can I speak to? And let's have conversations so we can discuss the issues, because I want to know what your real experience is, not what the literature says right now. First, I want to know your real experience, and then we can address things. So some of these collaborations look like people from within the community who are dealing with different health issues. It also looks like working with the current system right now. I'm a part of several different initiatives. So I'm on the board of directors for the Canadian Liver Foundation. I'm based in Canada. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. So I'm on the board of directors for the Canadian Liver Foundation, which it's amazing because I'm like the first person on this national board of a health nonprofit that is not an accountant, is not a physician. I'm absolutely the youngest person on that board, and I'm coming to it not from someone from a physician or from a accounting background. I'm coming into it from the quote unquote patient voice, because I myself was born with a rare liver disease that impacted my entire life. And when I have gone through my own education, my own business experience to understand how do I communicate from the scar and not from the wound, and I can speak the same language, I can speak to authority, and I can challenge authority with knowledge. Now I'm able to be at the table to provide more insights, not only how we need to address the issues, but also where does research funding go? And oftentimes that's a huge thing that people don't pay attention to, because they're just thinking about solving the bleeding at the moment, but they don't look at addressing where the issue of hemorrhage comes from, right? When it comes to all of these issues. So it looks like my work within the non-for-profit space. It looks like my work within the system, where I also sit on the board for a family health team based here in Toronto. Well, it's Ontario. It's an Ontarian one, but it's based in Toronto. And it looks like working with the largest healthcare system the health network in Canada, where I sit on several committees and address exactly how does this healthcare network, first of all, how do they conduct their hiring policies? How do they conduct their interviews when they're hiring for some of these things? How do they assess and establish their declarations of values that conduct how they're able to better assess their own metrics? When I'm sitting on these different committees, when I'm sitting on these different boards, I'm able to help challenge those systems. But I also consult a lot of the health tech companies, where it is addressing health equity a little bit now, but it's addressing these issues for the future moving forward. Because I'm very adamant about building systems and not just addressing the immediate issue that we see. So how do we look at this? Who are the people that we need to conduct? And I never liked the term, giving a voice to the voiceless, because it's BS. We all have some form of a voice. So what I do is I amplify the voices that already exist. I help them understand their own power so they can shout it from the rooftops. I create platforms so everyone can continue to speak. And I make sure that I sit down with all the people who need to be listening and fine tune their ear and make sure that they sit the heck down and they better pay attention. So I'm essentially a conduit for community. When people talk about community building, there's already a community. What you need to do is be a community organizer and be a conduit for what the community needs. And then you do whatever it takes to make sure that you can create those connections with what they need and who needs it. That's ultimately the way that I like to execute my own work in the health equity space.
Wow, thank you so much, Mohit. When I see you on the clubhouse streets, I always feel like I need to hear more from you. I want to listen more I want to take more information from your brain and put it on the table. And I feel like that's what, not all, but that's partly what we were able to accomplish today. For those who are just joining us, we've been here for about half an hour and we've been listening to the incredible leader, Mohit, Aurora, who has shared with us, his interpretation of today's proverb from Nigeria that says the tongue is only 3 inches, but it can kill a man that is 6 feet tall. He has also shared with us a story from his childhood that inspires his leadership currently. And we've talked about, the Faith Makers platform that he runs here on Clubhouse. That is quite incredible. Mohit, later on, I want you to share your closing remarks and also share with us, when Faith Makers sessions happen and how people who are listening can join the next one, and also how everyone who is listening can follow you across social media and support your work. But for now, I just quickly want us to hear from our incredible speakers who have joined us. Just for a minute, share your interpretation of the proverb, and then if you have any comment to Brother Mohit, you can share it as well, but just make it 1 minute at the most 2, so that we can hear from everybody on stage. And then Mohit is going to share the closing remarks and how you can stay connected with him. So we'll go to Latanja, briefly share with us your interpretation.
Thank you very much, Simon, for having me. And yes, I do have a question for your guest speaker, Mohit Aurora, if I may. The interpretation that I have for this, the tongue is only 3 inches, but it can kill a man that's 6 feet tall. I say that there's power in humility, honor, and humanity. And it makes me think about a time when our ancestors, the Africans, were enslaved, and how they taught those enslavers how to be humane and human with humility. Because if you're asking someone that is not human to serve you food, to cook for you, and they would actually have to show you a certain amount of humility and to be polite and gracious enough to you, knowing that they within themselves are not this person that you have created them to be. So they actually taught them how to be humane. And so with that particular interpretation, as it has a power within your tongue to be able to kill a man that's 6 feet tall. I mean, there's quite a bit of things that could be said, but there's something about honor, humility, and humanity that comes into the forefront when we're talking about integrity within a person. So I actually have a question for you there, Mr. Aurora. If you could heighten or highlight, that is, if you have found any correlation with critical race theory and how it intercepts with health equity. Because when we look at the history of someone like Henrietta Lacks and the contribution as it is when you're talking about the higher pain threshold, is there any correlations when we're talking about tackling the misnomers as it comes up with these systematic prejudices, if you will? And how also does that coordinate with your Hindu story when you talk about the inner power? How is it that the time we're in now with the COVID-19 has the accessibility towards inner power? And that's what I have. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that question, Latonya, and please help me if I remember the first part, but if I'm not addressing the second part, just let me know. But I think there's absolutely connection to critical race theory. I mean, it's ultimately when we look at some of the education that's provided in med ed, in medical education, we look at these false stories that oftentimes are these false narratives that are oftentimes provided that showcase, they'll say something like, well, skin of those with darker melanin is thicker, so they don't really feel as much pain. And that's going back to this idea, ultimately that we're looking at this as a social construct when reality is there's no data that suggests that there are different and nerve receptors in different melanin, that some skin is thicker or thin. It's just a matter of how a lot of this data was originally established, who was involved, in writing this literature. Oftentimes, many of us who come from ancestry of colonized countries, we know for a fact how much our history has been rewritten and erased, and that's why it's so important that we look back at anything that's considered as fact when it comes to do with our culture, when it comes to do with our race, and we actually go back and we get the proper data. I think about this today in a lot of my work whenever I'm working with a healthcare system and they showcase certain survey results. It's really interesting to see these survey results whenever they provide and whenever they show data, even with some of the research papers, because I'm thinking, well, show me the breakdown. I want to know the demographics. I want to know who you reached out to for this and how did you reach out to them. Because even if you think you got a diverse response, well, if you posted something on a website or through an email newsletter and you didn't actively reach out to community organizations that are more in tune with certain communities, then the people who are responding to you, first of all, already have a sense of empowerment because they're looking for information. So even that is an issue when it comes to collecting appropriate data. So I think when we're doing this kind of work, we need to not rewrite. We need to write proper. We need to write proper history and showcase the fact that most of the ways that we understand health when it comes to different people of different backgrounds, whether it's based off of your melanin, whether it's based off of your gender, whatever it may be, is addressed in a factual based way and not based off of some construct that someone created to better ensure better access to a certain group of people, because that's unfortunately a reality when it comes to a lot, not all, but when it comes to a certain section of health education.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was an excellent response, Latanja. Thank you again for the question. I want us to move to Crystal and then Melissa and give everybody on stage a chance to share with us their interpretation. And I would encourage you to send Mohit questions in the back channel, especially because of time, so that we can we can listen to everybody's interpretations. Thank you again. Crystal, I hope you're doing well. Share with us your interpretation of today's proverb.
Hi, everyone. Yes, this is Crystal speaking. The tongue is only 3 inches, but it can kill a man that is 6 feet tall. Immediately, I thought about a concept from the book, The Four Agreements, and about adopting thoughts, adopting agreements in our head that we hear from other people. And when we talk about words, we sometimes don't understand, or we're not mindful at the time that words come out of our mouth, how they can land and make an impact on people. And so I think about how, even though it doesn't take much to talk, the impact of our words can resonate in a way that can manifest in a lot of negative ways. So just being mindful of the things that we say. I also found a lot of interest in what was shared with Mohit as far as like everything, but from health equity and the Hindu story from growing up with these deities and hiding God within yourself, something that has to be found or discovered. I think that ever since we've kind of adopted this more westernized practices of religion that externalizes God outside of yourself, it's almost at the expense of our own mental health, because we externalize everything and we don't practice mindfulness. We use religion almost as an escape to do the inner work that is really going to heal us. So I found a lot of resonance in what was shared there. And also highlighting intersectionality as well when it comes to health equity. I found, especially on this app, it can be very discouraging because the concept of intersectionality is just so difficult for people to understand because we're all marginalized. Well, at least the people who I have a vested interest in seeing liberated are marginalized. But then we add in other types of identities coupled in with Blackness, where you're Black and you're a woman. You're Black, you're a woman, you're queer. You're Black, you're a woman, you're queer, and you may be trans. All of these things, as it becomes more marginalized, the ones who aren't as marginalized within all of those experiences, they can be, even the more marginalized experience can be complicit in their own liberation, in their own progression. And it just, I do want to see equity for us all, because within equity, it's going to look different depending on where your entry point is into the world, no matter what your identity is. It's going to look different, and it needs to all be considered, and we have to keep talking about it. There's room for everyone to be liberated. So it's going to be a long way. It's a lot of work to do, even with all of the systems and reframing that was discussed that has to be approached. There's so many different entry points to get the work done. So I really appreciate this discussion. Look forward to seeing what comes out of this work.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I'm grateful for your contribution. Mohit, just sharpen your pencil and notepad. There's so much here that you have to wrap up in your closing remarks, so be ready. Now we are joined by Melissa. Melissa, thank you again for your continued support. Share with us your interpretation of this proverb. Thanks a lot.
Hi, this is Melissa speaking. Thank you so much, Simon, for inviting me in. And I really enjoyed listening to you, Crystal and Latanja and Mohit. Oh my goodness. What a gift it is to be able to share the space and listen to everything that you shared. Going back to the proverb, the tongue is only 3 inches, but it can kill a man that is 6 foot tall. I mean, what could I say that hasn't already been said, other than for me, how it landed is back to that, the power of the word, but more than anything, even with our greatest intention to deliver a message, let's say even from love, to be able to hold the space that communication isn't just about delivering the message, but ensuring that the message is received in the way we intend it. So I'm going to say that again. Communication is not just about delivering the message, but ensuring that it's delivered, that it's received in the way that we intended. Because, as is mentioned in the proverb, that 3 inches could kill a man 6 foot tall. The power of our word, also based on someone else's lived experience, which Mohit, you spoke to at great length on different areas as well. And the diversity is what comes into this, the lived experience that you spoke to as well. We're all here living our unique adventure of life and tapping into that supreme divine power that lives within us, that the Bhagavad Gita, as you mentioned, Mohit, speaks about this opportunity for us as mere human beings to delve, to adventure, and to explore the power that lives within us that we not only underestimate, but we also undervalue. And I think that power of awareness, mindfulness, and really in slowing down, not just with the words that we choose to express ourselves with, but the compassion after we deliver our words to hold the space for somebody else's experience so that we can lean in and truly listen to what their share is saying about them. Because as we learn about them, as we learn about each other through listening, we're also learning so much about ourselves. And I'm mindful of time, and everybody else here is going to share. Simon, thank you again for this opportunity. I really feel deeply nourished by this wisdom that I'm hearing from everybody. And Mohit, I'm so glad to know you from this space. This is Melissa, and I'm complete. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Melissa, for all the wonderful work you do as well. Thank you. Akinse, share with us briefly your interpretation of this proverb. I suspect that you are probably from the region that this proverb comes from, so you can take 2 minutes. I'm asking people to take a minute, but take 2 minutes because you're probably closer to this than everyone else.
Yes, good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Just some clarity on who I am. Again, my name is Baba Akinsheye. I am actually African in America. I've yet to step foot on homeland yet, but definitely looking forward to do so. My perspective certainly comes from a Nigerian philosophical or spiritual perspective. So hopefully I can add another perspective to this. One of the first things I'd like to say is that from this proverb, the things that uh, enter my mind is the value of mind over matter itself, the ability to have mind over matter, the immaterial over the material. You know, I even think about uh, the powers, or actually the the culture of our ancestors that seem to value the idea of wit and the ability to be cunning when necessary, even the ability to lie. You know, some of us like to dip our feet into folklore and storytelling, and what you'll often hear is how one the spider was witty enough or cunning enough to outfox or to outsmart another animal or another beast or human being. So the idea of being able to use mind over matter, or using the power of the tongue to outwit and to out strategize an opponent or an enemy is very common in African philosophy. But really quickly, what I will say is that at least from the Nigerian community or Nigerian culture, specifically the Yoruba culture, there's a term that's called the power of the tongue. Now, modern Nigerian or modern Yoruba speakers might use the word or words agbara ahon, meaning the power of the tongue. But those who are involved in traditional spirituality may use the word afoshe, huani afoshe, may we be able to have the ability to speak things and allow them to happen. May we speak things and allow them to happen. And that's a very powerful affirmation to have for all of us in our daily lives, and for us in various communities and as a people as well. So um, I would just like to end with that and say that with Afoshe, with the ability to speak things and allow them to happen, we have the power to not only kill and defeat enemies, but also speak life into ones that we love, or speak life into an enemy such that they will no longer be an enemy anymore, right? So with that, I'll just say, let's be mindful of, I'll urge everyone and ask them to be mindful of what we think, because that affects what we say, and eventually that affects what we do. Thank you again, Simon, for allowing me to speak on this beautiful platform. Mr. Mohit, it's so great to hear your voice and so great to hear your story. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much for your contribution, I can say. And now we're going to hear from Johnny Nogood, who is, one of the co-creators of this space. Johnny, is a member of this village who, brick by brick helped build the daily African Proverbs to what it is today. Johnny, please share your perspectives today. And I know you know Mohit, so if you have a question for him, go ahead.
Man, peace, brother Simon, and peace to brother Mohit and everybody else that's on the stage. It's good to see everybody. Brother Simon, I feel like my interpretation has already been spoken, so I'm gonna limit that. Brother Mohit, I'm gonna just give you words of encouragement and thank you for doing the work that you're doing. As far as in the intersections of health and race equity work, just making sure that your disproportionate minority contact work, man, is a very hard, tough line of work to be in. So thank you for representing. Brother Simon, I just look forward to hearing everybody else's interpretation.
Thank you so much, Johnny, for being here. I appreciate it a lot. Flamingo, share with us your perspectives.
Thank you for inviting me to the stage, Simon. This feels like a spiritual discussion, so many gems, and thank you for creating the space and for everybody sharing their thoughts. The only thing I can think of is Islamic greeting. In the Muslim tradition, words not only do they kill a man, but they can also build men. And when Muslims greet each other, we say, peace and blessings be upon you, which is assalamu alaikum. And if we truly internalize that, I wonder how many wars would be would come to an end. There's so much suffering in the world. So just to say that again, peace and blessings be upon everybody here. Um, but thank you again for inviting me to stage, and I'm done speaking.
Wonderful. You're most welcome, and peace and blessings be upon you as well. I wonder if Kay is available. I see that she seems to be on a phone call. So we will go all the way to Ingrid. Ingrid, thank you for being here. We'll come back to Kay in a moment. Share with us your perspectives briefly. Thank you so much.
Grand Rising all. Hi Simon. It's been quite a while. Mohit, I came into at the end of your verbal speech, but what I did catch is when you said we refer to people saying they're gonna give voice to people. So now I'm gonna change my phrase because my thing is I want to be help geriatric population. And I always say, in my opinion, I feel like if they don't have a voice, and I want to be their voice, but I will change that to be their voice is being muted, and I will amplify their voice. So thank you for that. The proverb, the tongue is only 3 inches, but can kill a man that is 6 feet tall. I take that to say there's power in the tongue. And what you say, even though there's the myth that words don't hurt, it's a reminder to be mindful of the words that we say and not only how what we say but how we say it, because 90% of the message is the delivery in the message. And as Flamingo said, that goes both ways. The way same way we speak, we can speak to hurt someone or kill someone, as the laws of attraction goes. We can turn that around to speak love and peace into people. So that's my piece. Just the tongue is mightier than the sword, and what comes out can really hurt or kill someone. That's my piece.
Thank you, Ingrid. I'm grateful that you're here, and thank you for your contribution. Tracy, please share with us your perspectives.
Thank you so much, Simon. Thank you, Mohit, for this beautiful conversation. And I really so appreciate everyone's interpretation on stage. My interpretation of this proverb really begins as an energy that produces a vibration that I feel as a frequency, and that evokes an emotion. And so I ask myself, how can my words evoke emotion in a way that someone feels seen and they feel heard? So thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation. It's my first time in this club, and I was just energetically drawn here. So thank you. Peace and blessings. I'm done speaking.
Peace and blessings to you. And now to our very last, Kay is still on the phone. So we have our last speaker on stage, my brother Said, who is also another co-creator of the Daily African Proverbs. Said, thank you again for all the work you do. Share with us your perspectives briefly.
Hey, Simon, thank you so much. This has been really amazing, and thanks for Mohit for his very um, intervention. That was really amazing, learning a lot of things, and I was really reflecting so much on what he was saying, and especially just different areas of life, and as people that have been colonized and research and data and all those things. Just it's just amazing to hear your perspective. It's just great. Thank you so much. And when I was looking at this proverb and just like thinking about it, it just reminded me about how when influential people, when they say things, it might not really sound big to them, but it can affect the whole population or the whole country or sometimes the whole world. So for me, I was just thinking how much sometimes when we get to a position of influence, we just need to control how we say, when we say it, and who are listening to us, and how that world, how our tongue can influence what we are talking to people, or what we are expressing. Thank you, and this is amazing. Thank you, Brother Simon.
You're most welcome. Now, I want to just let everybody who is in the room with us, who might have not been here at the beginning, you're in the Daily African Proverbs. We hold this space every single day, Monday to Friday lately. And the purpose of this is to make our ancestors smile. You know, my mother loved African Proverbs. When I made a mistake, she would warn me with an African proverb. When I did something amazing, she would congratulate me with an African proverb, you know. When the food was good in our household, there was an African proverb about it. So African proverbs are applicable in every situation in life. So that's part of why we are here, because someone like my mom, who is no longer with us, wherever she might be as an ancestor, she's probably laughing a lot every morning when I start this room, because she knows that this crazy guy is back again talking about Proverbs, you know. So that's part of why we are here, really. And now I want to, just thank you, Mohit, for taking the time and for, really pouring your heart onto this space. Share with us, what you had in your closing remarks, and also how everyone who is listening or watching can stay connected with you.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. I mean, I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone who shared today in the room and in our community, because it was so beautiful to hear everyone's interpretations, and also just to hear everyone share, because ultimately, when we're talking about this proverb, like we've heard from a few people today, the power of the word and how it can be used to cut down, it can also be used to build up. And I think one of the things that we need to remember is, in time, that 6-foot man can become a 6,000 foot, wall. But together, and with everyone who's here, everyone that we continue to speak to, all of our 3-inch tongues are able to come together and build up the voice of community, the voice of people. This is how we are able to no longer look at these walls and these visualizations of giants, to recognize, how do we break it down? And honestly, it's just, if it's a 6-foot man or if it's a 6,000 foot wall, it's just one at a time. And we all need to be able to use our voices. And in terms of connection, I'm pretty active everywhere. So whether it's on Clubhouse here where we're at, or Twitter, Instagram, you could find pretty much all of my social links. I just post everything on my website, which is mohitaurora.xyz. And I never use the term follow. I always say, just connect with me. Like, let's connect together. Let's connect with one another, because this is truly something that we all need to do together. And I really want to continue to learn from others, and I want to continue to build with everyone. It's a truly important thing, and ultimately, I'll use my platform wherever I can, in the spaces that I can get to. And if someone else can't get into that space, I'll use my position there. And any space I can't get into, or if I know someone who can't get into a space and someone else who does, we'll find a way of connecting. So let's all connect together and continue to use our tongues and our minds to continue to break down these things that create inequities, and make sure that we can build a healthy and loving community for all of us.
Thank you, Mohit. I'm grateful. And just a quick a couple of announcements. Today at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have the Daily African Proverbs office hours. This is a closed session just for members of this club, where we will be talking about how this week went and also how next week is looking like. We are also going to be recruiting speakers during that session. We are going to be recruiting volunteers during that session. So please join us. The room is already scheduled for 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Number 2, tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on Clubhouse in the Africa Day Club. We have a weekly session. Tomorrow we are primarily focusing on African languages, and we will be addressing the question of should Africa have one language, or should we have regional languages representing different regions of Africa? We will have language experts from across Africa. This is the second of a 3-part series around African languages that we are having. So join us for that as well. With that, thank you all so much. And my brother Mohit, take good care of yourselves. I'm sure I'll be seeing you around very soon. Peace and love.
African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington.